Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Adobe Live. Welcome to the Creative Kickoff, a new series we've started this year here on the Adobe Live channel. And Wednesdays are Photoshop days. So I kicked it off a couple weeks back with some Photoshop tips and tricks. I ran out of time because 30 minutes goes by a lot quicker than 60 minutes. And I also made a fatal error. I saved, or I ran out of time with the Photoshop on iPad stuff, and then I had a glitch, and it didn't end well. So I'm going to fix all that today. We're going to start off with Photoshop on the iPad so that I don't run out of time this time. So welcome. If you that way, I just keep doing regular Photoshop tips until I do run out of time. So it's going to be the best of both worlds in that case. Let me get the chat going here. Good. All right. So I see folks from all over the world. I see people on YouTube, Twitter, or X, LinkedIn, and San Antonio, Denmark. I see people, of course, on Behance. So if you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, wherever you're watching this from, that's cool. You can hang out there. You can also check it out on Adobe Live at b.net/Adobe Live, and that is where the moderators are, and that's where the main chat is going to take place. But I'm going to try and dive into both chats as much as I can and answer your questions wherever I can. All right, so how does this work? I get like 22 more minutes left with you. And these are literally random Photoshop tips and tricks to help you kick off your day, afternoon, maybe your evening of creativity. That's what these creative kickoffs are. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have design, we have video, we have Photoshop, and that way you get kind of 30 minutes of a Adobe evangelist or community advocate, as we're toying around with that title as well, kicking your day off with some creative, cool stuff. All right, so without further ado, let me go ahead and dive into the iPad. So we're going to do the iPad. Going to start off there, and this is Photoshop on the iPad. So a lot of people asked last time, oh, and by the way, even though it didn't work out last time, I ran out of time, I did record a separate video on my YouTube channel of the demo I was going to do anyway. So I did record that immediately after the stream. So if you want to see that demo, you can go back and watch it. This is going to be a different demo. So you get two demos for the price of one. So Photoshop on the iPad, kind of the same techniques, some of the same new features, but different examples. So what's new in Photoshop on the iPad? Well, we brought the generative AI Firefly capabilities into Photoshop on the iPad. So for example, I have this photo of kids. I'm just going to pinch and zoom it down a little bit. And they're playing in the kitchen, they're baking, and flowers flying everywhere, and it's tightly cropped. It's just badly cropped. I need a bigger version of this, but I don't have the original to uncrop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Apple Pencil that was charging here. So I'm going to take my Apple Pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and grab you can do it with your finger, but I'm more precise with the pencil, especially when I'm not holding it right in my hand and doing it. I'm going to go ahead and just expand this crop out. Let's zoom down a bit. Let's expand it out that way. Maybe not that much. And up to the top, because we don't want to cut off their hats or anything like that. And now over on the left-hand side, I have the option. I could just hit done and it would just expand the canvas. But on the left-hand side, there's a button that says Generative Expand. And now I can type in what I want to expand it with. Or I can say, nope. Generative, you're an AI, you're a brain in and of yourself. You go figure out what should be there. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit generate and let it think about what's going to be in that space. And we'll give it a few seconds to do that. And I'm going to be just as surprised as you are, because you never get the same result twice. And cool, I get a kitchen, I get the rest. Now, just like on Photoshop on desktop, in the properties panel on iPad, you get your three results. So that's also new. Before you could open up your generative AI creations in Photoshop on iPad, but you couldn't see the alternate results. Now you can, and now you can pick them and choose them, and you can run it again. You can try which one you like the best. So that is working fine. That was Generative Expand and Photoshop on the iPad, available now. Just go download the iPad version if you have an iPad. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, what iPad will it work on? So forth and so on. I don't know off the top of my head. Best thing you can do, if the moderator doesn't put it in the chat, is simply Google Photoshop on iPad system requirements, and it'll tell you specifically which iPads everything will work on. So Photoshop might work, but generative AI might not work if your iPad's old or not powerful enough. I'm using an iPad Pro, current generation, so it works fine on this particular device. But if you're questioning which devices things work on, always remember we publish that stuff out in the system requirements for whatever your device is. So if you're trying to use Lightroom on your iPhone and you can't do certain things, or your Android phone, go check out the system requirements for that. All right, so with that, I'm gonna now go into, let's go for broke here. I'm gonna go to my selection tool. I'm gonna grab my lasso. And I'm just gonna come down here and just lasso an area. And when I lasso that area, notice I get the same kind of contextual taskbar at the bottom that's giving me the option to choose Generative Fill. So when I do Generative Fill here, I'm just gonna type in cake. So I'm just typing it on my iPad keyboard, typing in the word that I want it to generate. I could do birthday cake, I could be more elaborate, I could do chocolate cake, whatever. I'm just randomly one word prompt. I usually keep my prompts short unless I have to go further. In this case, I may have to go further. That's definitely not the kind of cake I'm looking for. So let's make a better prompt. Let's go, let's see here, birthday cake. How about a birthday cake? Cake with candles. So that was an example of when short doesn't always work, and you might need to go more words or more descriptive of a prompt. And so in this case, birthday cake with candles should give me a better result than what I got before. So I got the one there, I got that one. And a lot of times if you're not getting the result you wanted, it could be that your selection wasn't big enough. So in this case, it did give me a very, very small, like cupcake kind of thing. If I wanted a bigger cake, draw a bigger selection because it's restricted to your selection. So that's Generative Fill, Generative Expand. Now on Photoshop on iPad, let me just make sure, let me look at my note. I had jotted those features down. And and we did cover this in the video. I cover this as well. If I go to my layers and I go back to that last layer, the remove tool has made its way onto iPad as well. So if I tap all the cloning tools, I see the new remove tools there, and I can brush with that tool. I can make my brush bigger, of course, and that will use AI to remove things out of photos on Photoshop on the iPad, just like it does in Photoshop on desktop. Same technology. And and I have multiple layers, so of course it's not gonna, it's only showing me the back one. But anyway, you do have the remove tool there if you want to use it. And there's a cake off to the right-hand side I kind of like even better. But remove tool, Generative Expand, Generative Fill, all new in Photoshop on iPad. And I'm looking at my screen right now. Hold on for a second. I was about to switch back to my desktop, and my desktop's freaking out. Hang on. Let me unplug the cable, plug it back in, and hopefully that my monitor went to sleep. When I woke it back up, it was shaking. So let's not have it shake when I switch over to it. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, you gotta love this. Now it's completely, my display is completely gone. No, I don't want to do the whole thing on the iPad. No. Hold on, folks. See if I can get it back. Like I have an external display that this all runs through, and literally my display just went completely blank. Oh, God. I'm not seeing anything on the computer either. All right, give me a second. I'll reboot it. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat. This is an unplanned break. Like, I'm not even getting the chime or anything. Like, my computer just literally died. Oh, there it goes. It's coming back. All right, we'll give it a second to boot back up. Then I got to open the apps and so forth and so on. So anyway, while we're waiting on that, I can just talk a little bit more about Photoshop on the iPad. So many of the same tools have now been ported over because remember when Photoshop on the iPad first came out, a lot of it was just, it was cool, but you couldn't do a lot of things yet because the features weren't implemented. Hang on, I'm logging in here. And password typed in. Okay, so the team has slowly but surely been adding more of those tools back into or into Photoshop on iPad, so you can do a lot of the same things you do on desktop on the go. One of the other things that I want to point out is that in order for me to get this image onto the iPad, all I did was open it up in Photoshop on desktop and save it as a cloud document. So once I save it as a cloud document, if I go to my home screen now, all my cloud documents are there, so I can see them immediately on Photoshop on the iPad. As a matter of fact, even on this screen, when I saved it from the desktop, it just popped up on the screen. Like I didn't have to do anything else. All right. Oh, and it looks like it's even recovering at least one of my documents. This is cool. All right, we're back up on my computer. Let me switch over to it now so we can see it. Cool, we're back. Okay, next up, I still may need to quit it and relaunch it because my libraries aren't there, but let's see if I can get to that stuff. Yeah. Hold on, folks. I just want to make sure I can get to all my other documents. Oh, they're there. Okay, the library's popped up. Okay, so now let's get into the desktop tips. And it just ate up a bunch of my time with this reboot, but we're going to march on. So one of my first desktop tips is the fact that you can colorize menu options. So last time I did this a couple weeks back, we talked about creating custom tool panels, but you can customize more than just your tool panels. I like to also customize my menus. And what we mean by that is you can do a few things. Number one, you can go in and simply change the color of things so that it jumps out at you. If you're always looking for something in your Photoshop menu and you can never remember which menu it's under or you can never find it quickly, you can always go in and simply change the color of it so it stands out. So it's like, okay, whenever I'm looking for example, under the edit menu, whenever I'm looking for sky replacement, I can never find it, but I made it blue so it stands out so I can always see it at a glance. So if you come down to edit and you come down to menus, you'll have to create your own set. So you can't modify the default set, but you can create your own set. And then once you create your own set, or just start modifying it, will create your own set for you. You can then go in and specify what color you want something to be. So if I want a content-aware scale to be violet, for example, now when I click OK, under that menu, content-aware scale will be in violet. And there it is. Content-aware scale is now in violet. So it's just a way for you to not only customize your colors, but if you also want to say, hey, I don't use all these options under a particular menu. If you go to your menus, you can also hide things you don't use. So we used to talk about doing pranks on people that leave their computer open when they go to lunch or whatever, come in and hide things like undo or don't do that. Anyway, but you can hide things on your own menus so that, that things that you just never use, you can say, okay, I never use, for example, define custom shape. So if I turn that off, it's literally not going to be in the menu anymore. It'll still be a function. If it has a command key, it'll still be a key, but it won't be showing in the menu until you turn it back on. So you can minimize your menus And you can even make a set that says minimized, and that way it's only the Photoshop things that you use. All right, next up, yes, that is mean. That's why we don't talk about that prank. Next up, let's go to next tip, which is I'm going to do two things at once. The main tip is going to be that you can use the camera raw filter to do a lot of things easier in Photoshop than you would if you were trying to do them manually with all the old features. But before we do that, the first tip is if you want it to be non-destructive, convert it to smart filters. So what this means is that you see that I'm on the background in my layers panel. When I say convert for smart filters, what that will do is it will, hang on, let me move this window out of the way. It will convert that into a smart filter layer, and that way it will be whatever I do to that layer now from a filter perspective or any perspective from that matter, it's a smart object, will not physically harm the pixels or change the pixels of that layer. So now I can go crazy with any of the filters and always come back and say, nope, I don't want to do that filter anymore, or I want to change what I did and undo it. So for example, now if I go and say this picture is just drab and blown out, it doesn't look good. If I go to my camera raw filter now, which I've made green so I can quickly bring it up, I can go in and make adjustments without them being destructive. So for example, I always hit auto just to see what auto gives me. Auto made some nice choices, but I'm still not quite where I want to be. I might drop the exposure down just a hair on this one. I like everything else it did in light, but I want to do some more things for example, for saturation. This can take a little bit more saturation, a little bit more vibrance, and definitely under effects, I want to do dehaze. So I'm applying all of these things without having to go to levels and curves and manual adjustments that we've done over the decades. This is just a quick slider-based interface that's in Camera Raw, in Lightroom Classic, that's very easy and very intuitive because you can't go wrong with a slider. You go too far one way, you don't like it, bring it back. So I could also, for example, add texture to make the rocks a little sharper. Look at how blurry they are if I reduce the texture. But if I go all the way, or not all the way, but if I go up on the texture, it just makes the image sharper. Now, you can also go in and do masking. So if you wanted to mask a particular area, or you want to paint, or you want to do parts of the image differently, you can. So for example, I might go into, just to show you an example here, I might go into a bigger brush and brush the water. So I'm manually brushing the water here on both sides. Okay. And I'm not taking my time and being very careful because I don't have time. But now that I've brushed that area, I can go down and do anything I want to that area. So if I want the water bluer, I can just change the temperature to make it bluer or cooler. So that's only affecting that area that I brushed. So all of that's non-destructive. When I click OK, saying I think I'm done, it will show up on the layers panel as a smart filter. I can come in and turn it off. I see my before and after. I can go right back into it, double click, and get right back into where I was and say, no, that adjustment I made on that mask is a little too blue. Let's go down and bring it back some. It was a little too much. So it's a non-destructive way of editing in Photoshop that's easy, much easier than all the traditional ways. Traditional ways are great if you already know them, but this is much easier for people that are new to Photoshop or learning Photoshop for the first time. Now, the only thing I don't like about this image, of course, is the sky. And that brings me to my next tip, is that in masking in masking in the camera raw filter, I did have a select sky option, but you also have that option in Photoshop as well. You have not only select sky, but you also have replace sky. But I just want to select it because I'm going to use Generative Fill to replace it. So if I go to my select menu, one of the things you can do, you can select color range, focus area, subject, and now sky. It'll just automatically use AI to figure out what the sky of the image is and just make the selection. That's all it did. Just selected it, didn't do anything else to it. Now if I go in and I go to Generative Fill, I can type in down here at the bottom what I want it to be. I want it to be a beautiful sunset sky. And it will generate a new layer with sky choices for me, and I'll see if I like any of them. If not, I can keep generating and keep going. I have a photo I took in 2006 on nearly the same angle. We might have been there around the same time. I can't remember what year this was, but it was about that time. All right, a little too orange for me. Better. Actually, I kind of like that one the best. And if, again, any of these, if I don't like them, I can regenerate or I can adjust these. So these are layers that can still be adjusted. So this sky layer is just a layer that Generative Fill put in for me. And you could also change your description. So you could say desert sky or sunrise or whatever, or put the sun in the sky. So you can do all of those things to kind of get the image the way you want it. Okay. Next up, let's go to my next tip, which is going to be the object selection tool. And before I had to reboot, I had all of this stuff open. So give me a second to open up some of this stuff again. I had that image open. I had that image open. I had that image open. Just going through so I don't have to look for them in a minute because I'm going to need each one. Let's start with this one. So in the past, you would use tools like the lasso and the rectangular marquee, elliptical marquee to make selections, and now it's just so much easier with the object selection tool. So number one, the object selection tool is a separate tool that you can now click on. It will run for a few seconds. You see it running up there in the control panel, this little spinny thing, and then once it stops spinning, that means it's identified all the objects that the AI found in the image. So as I hover over the image, it shows me what I can just click on to select. So it's found each one of these objects. If I want the apple here, I just click, and it makes a selection of that apple. If I want the leaf next to it, I can hold down the Shift key and click, and it will select the leaf next to it. And then I can do whatever I want to do to those things. Including making adjustments, using the camera raw filter, copying them to their own layer, anything else I want to do. So yeah, the pen tool, exactly. I remember people would fight me when I would show them a new way to use it. Oh, it's not as precise as the pen tool. And maybe you're right, but it also doesn't take nearly as long as using the pen tool either. Okay, so the object selection tool is great, but here's a bonus tip. Let me deselect, Command D, Control D on Windows. And I'm going to right click on the layer, or the background in this case. And when I right click, there's a magical option called Mask All Objects. This is the object selection tool on steroids. If I say Mask All Objects, it already identified what all the objects were in the scene. This is now just going through and making a mask of each one for you. So if I click on each one of these masks, if I hold down my Command key or Control key on Windows, it doesn't name them because it doesn't know what you want to call each one, but it's gone ahead and masked every single thing in the picture that you can then use whenever you want. It's just taking that work out, and boom, there they are. All right, so I got like a couple minutes left. That's why I said 30 minutes goes by quick. Object selection tool. Let's see. Let's go to the bird image. This one. Another often overlooked feature is you have extract from image, which is actually a separate app called Capture on your phone, but it's built into Photoshop. If you go to your plus sign below your libraries panel, so libraries panel, plus sign at the bottom of the libraries panel, you'll see that you have this option called extract from image. And when you choose that, that's like, I have a photo. Give me all the assets in that photo that I can use in my design or my layout or other photos or things I'm going to do. So for example, when I choose extract from image, that will go out and it will show me I have a choice of making patterns from the existing image. So I can change the pattern to whatever I want. I can even change what style of pattern it is. And it will just generate a pattern in my CC library that I can use as a background or backdrop for anything else I want to do. So, want to make custom patterns out of an image that no one else will have? Open up the image and extract from image. Next, what if you just want the vector shapes of the bird themselves. And you can always go in and use the eraser. So if you didn't want the branch, you can erase the branch so it doesn't give you the branch, and it just gives you the parts of the image that you want. So this would create vectors and save it to your libraries as well. Color themes. This is one of my favorite uses for it because I'm doing a design class later today, Design Disasters at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to tune in for that because I talk about color a lot in that class, and people have a hard time picking colors. And I say in that class that nature gets color right. So if you just use the colors in nature or the colors from your image, chances are they're going to go well together because nature gets it right. So just choosing, being able to make a custom color panel from this. You can also make custom gradients. And if your image had type, you could extract the type from it as well and get the font. All right, that is literally my time, just that quickly. Hope you enjoyed this creative kickoff. It will be available for replay. Go check out the one I did 2 weeks ago, including the separate iPad video on my channel at terrywhite.tv. Cheers, everyone. We'll catch you on the next one.